Hello, my name is Jason, and I need advice. My life has been turned upside down in ways I never imagined. I'm not sure where to begin, but here goes nothing. A little backstory: I'm 34, married to Lauren, the woman I thought was my soulmate. We've been together for 9 years, married for 5. Lauren is beautiful, smart, and has this charm that lights up a room. I always felt like I hit the jackpot with her, even if she could be, let's say, a little dramatic. We've had our ups and downs like any couple. Recently, though, things felt different, off. I'd chalked it up to the stress of life. We're in the process of renovating our house, and my younger brother, Matt, has been staying with us while he gets back on his feet. Matt and I have always been close. He's 5 years younger than me, the laid-back one in the family. Everyone loves Matt. He's funny, outgoing, and the kind of guy who can make friends with anyone. When he asked if he could crash at our place for a few months, I didn't think twice. He was family. But here's where things started to feel strange. Lauren had been acting differently. She'd always been opinionated and confident, but lately, her mood swings were unpredictable. One day, she was distant, barely acknowledging me. The next, she was overly affectionate, almost like she was trying too hard. She'd started going out more, girls' nights, she called them, but the timing never seemed to add up. Then there was Matt. I noticed he and Lauren had become friendly. At first, it didn't bother me. Matt was charming, it was just his nature. But they'd laugh at inside jokes I wasn't in on. I'd catch them exchanging quick glances across the room, glances that lingered just a second too long. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was being paranoid, overthinking things. But the feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. And then, last Saturday, everything changed. Lauren was out again, supposedly at dinner with her friend Erica. I stayed home to catch up on some work. Matt was out too, or so I thought. Around 9 p.m., I went to grab a beer from the garage fridge. That's when I noticed something odd. Matt's car was parked in the driveway. Confused, I walked back into the house, calling out his name. No response. The house was quiet, eerily so. That's when I heard it, a faint laugh, coming from upstairs. I froze. It was Lauren's laugh. At first, I thought I must be hearing things. But then I heard Matt's voice, low and unmistakable, followed by another laugh from Lauren. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to turn around, to leave, to pretend I hadn't heard anything. But I couldn't. I climbed the stairs, my heart pounding so loud I thought it might burst. The voices were coming from our bedroom. I know what you're probably thinking. Why didn't I barge in? Why didn't I confront them? Trust me, I wanted to. But something held me back. Fear, maybe? Or denial. Or maybe I just needed to know for sure before I did something I couldn't take back. I'm writing this because I feel like I'm on the edge of a cliff, and I don't know what to do next. I need advice. Do I confront them? Do I get proof first? Am I blowing this out of proportion? If you've read this far, thank you. I don't know what's coming, but I know it's going to hurt. After that night, I spent hours sitting alone in my car, parked at the end of the street, trying to process everything. It wasn't just the fear of what I thought I'd overheard, it was the fact that it was Matt. I guess I should explain a little about my brother. Matt has always been complicated. Growing up, he was the golden child. While I was the responsible one, Matt was the one everyone gravitated to. He had this effortless charm, this way of making people feel like they were the most important person in the room, until they weren't. To say Matt had a knack for lying would be an understatement. He didn't lie to hurt people, not usually. He lied to get what he wanted, to spin things in his favor. I remember him conning our mom into thinking he needed money for school supplies, only for me to catch him using it to buy concert tickets. He'd apologize, of course, swearing it was the last time. But it never was. Fast forward to a few months ago, and Matt's life was falling apart. He'd lost his job, something about a misunderstanding with his boss that he refused to elaborate on. His girlfriend of 3 years had dumped him, and he'd blown through his savings trying to keep up appearances. When he called me, saying he had nowhere else to go. How could I say no? At first, it was fine. He was grateful, polite, even helpful around the house. Lauren didn't seem to mind, and our guest room was just sitting there anyway. But then the cracks started to show. Matt could be exhausting. He had this way of making everything about him. If I mentioned a stressful day at work, he'd cut me off to tell me about his own tough day, though, as far as I could tell, his toughest task was figuring out what to order for lunch. And then there was the flirting. Matt flirted with everyone, and Lauren was no exception. It was subtle at first, a compliment about her outfit, a joke that made her laugh a little too hard. I brushed it off because, well, that was just Matt. He couldn't turn off the charm, even if he tried. But as the weeks went by, it started to get under my skin. Lauren had always been confident, and I loved that about her. She wasn't the type to fish for compliments, or need constant validation. But with Matt, she was different. She'd dress up more when he was around, laugh louder at his jokes, even start picking up on his mannerisms. And Matt ate it up. I'd catch him watching her when he thought I wasn't looking, his gaze lingering just a little too long. He had this smirk, like he knew he could have her if he wanted. I hate admitting this, but part of me felt jealous. Not just of Matt, but of how easily he seemed to connect with Lauren in a way I hadn't lately. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but I'd never doubted her loyalty, until now. The thing about Matt is that he's a master manipulator. He knows how to push buttons, how to make people doubt themselves. He could lie to your face with so much conviction that you'd question your own memory. Case in point, last week, I found one of Lauren's earrings on the floor of the guest room. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I casually asked her about it later. She said she must have dropped it while helping Matt move some boxes. When I mentioned it to Matt, he laughed. "Oh yeah, she was helping me out. You've got a good one, Chase. Lauren's the best." His tone was friendly, casual, but something about the way he said it made my skin crawl. And then there's Lauren. God, I love her, but she can be hard to pin down sometimes. When she's upset, she shuts down. If I ask her what's wrong, she'll roll her eyes and say, "Nothing," even when it's obvious something's bothering her. And when she's caught in a lie, about spending money we didn't agree on, or skipping out on plans, she gets defensive, turning it around on me. "Why are you always so suspicious?" she'd snap. "Do you not trust me?" It's not that I didn't trust her. At least I didn't used to. But now, after all the late nights, the secretive texts, the way she lights up around Matt, I don't know what to believe anymore. Back to that night. I didn't barge into the room. Instead, I went back downstairs and sat on the couch, trying to calm the storm in my mind. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe it wasn't what it seemed. But deep down I knew. The next morning, I acted like nothing was wrong. Lauren came downstairs, her hair wet from the shower, and kissed me on the cheek. "Good morning," she said, her voice light and cheerful. Matt joined us a few minutes later, pouring himself a cup of coffee like he didn't have a care in the world. "Morning, Jace," he said, grinning. I forced myself to smile back, but inside, I was seething. I need proof. I can't confront them without it, not when Matt is so good at twisting the truth. He'd turn it all around, make me look like the crazy one. And Lauren? She'd deny it, I'm sure. But something is going on, and I'm going to find out what. For now, I'm playing it cool. But the cracks are there, and sooner or later, this whole thing is going to come crashing down. For a couple of days, I managed to convince myself that everything was fine. Lauren had been in a surprisingly good mood, and we'd even had a rare romantic evening together. She'd cooked my favorite dinner, spaghetti carbonara, her specialty, and we spent the night reminiscing about our early days, laughing and sharing stories. I clung to those moments like a lifeline, hoping that maybe, just maybe, I was overreacting. Maybe Matt's friendliness toward Lauren was innocent. Maybe I was letting my insecurities and his history of lies cloud my judgment. We ended that night on the couch, her head resting on my shoulder while we watched a rom-com we'd both seen a dozen times. She fell asleep halfway through, and as I sat there, listening to her steady breathing, I thought, this is what matters. This is what's real. But of course, reality had other plans. The first crack came when Matt started pulling his usual stunts. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Lauren was out grocery shopping. I was fixing the leaky faucet in the kitchen when Matt sauntered in, shirtless and holding a beer, as if he were the king of the castle. "You really need to relax, Jace," he said, leaning against the counter. "I'm relaxed," I replied without looking up, focusing on tightening the wrench. "No, you're not. You're wound up like a freaking spring. Maybe that's why Lauren seems so tense lately." His tone was casual, but the jab was sharp enough to make me stop what I was doing. "Care to explain that?" I asked, turning to face him. Matt shrugged, taking a sip of his beer. "I'm just saying, maybe if you paid her a little more attention, she wouldn't seem so. I don't know. Restless." I clenched the wrench so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Watch it, Matt." He smirked, clearly enjoying himself. "Hey, just calling it like I see it. Don't shoot the messenger." That night, Lauren and I went out for dinner. It wasn't anything fancy, just a small Italian place we loved, but it felt good to be out together, away from the house and all its tension. She looked stunning, wearing a simple blue dress that brought out her eyes. For a while, it felt like old times. We talked about everything and nothing, laughed over shared jokes, and for a moment, I let myself believe that things really were okay. But when we got home, Matt was waiting for us. He was sitting in the living room, sprawled out on the couch like he owned the place. He had the TV blaring some action movie, but the moment we walked in, he turned it off and sat up, his expression unreadable. "Good night out?" he asked, his tone a little too casual. "Yeah," Lauren said brightly, setting her purse down. "We had a great time." Matt's eyes flicked to me, then back to her. "You know, Jace had a pretty wild time last night too." I froze. Lauren turned to me, a puzzled look on her face. "Last night?" Matt leaned back, his smirk growing. "Yeah. What was her name again?" "Oh, right. You didn't get her name, but you did get her number." "That girl who kissed you at the club? I'm pretty sure she was into you." The room went silent. Lauren's eyes narrowed, and she crossed her arms. "What is he talking about, Jason?" My mind raced, trying to process what had just happened. I stared at Matt, who was grinning like he'd just won the lottery. "You're making this up," I said through gritted teeth. "Don't try to stir up drama where there isn't any." "Oh, come on," Matt said, feigning innocence. "You're seriously going to deny it?" "I was just joking, man. You know, because of that business trip you were on last week?" I felt my stomach drop. He wasn't joking, and he wasn't messing around. He was trying to paint me as the bad guy, right in front of Lauren. "I was on a business trip, Matt," I said firmly. "You know that. Stop trying to cause problems." Lauren was silent, her eyes darting between us. I could see the gears turning in her head, and for the first time in our marriage, I felt a flicker of doubt in her gaze. Matt stood up, stretching dramatically. "Relax, bro. Just trying to lighten the mood. You two seem a little tense lately. Anyway, I'm heading out. Don't wait up." He grabbed his jacket and strolled out the door, leaving me standing there, seething. "Jason," Lauren said quietly, her voice breaking the heavy silence. "Is there anything you're not telling me?" I turned to her, desperate to salvage the moment. "Lauren, he's lying. You know how Matt is. He thrives on stirring the pot." She hesitated, her expression softening but not entirely convinced. "I know he can be difficult, but that was a really specific accusation, Jason." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Look, if you want to talk about trust, let's talk about why Matt's been acting so strange lately. Why he's been cozying up to you every chance he gets." Her eyes widened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," I said carefully, "that Matt isn't as innocent as he pretends to be. And maybe he's trying to create drama between us because he's hiding something himself." Lauren stared at me for a long moment, then sighed. I don't want to deal with this tonight. I'm going to bed. As she walked upstairs, I collapsed onto the couch, my head in my hands. Matt's words had done exactly what he wanted. They'd planted a seed of doubt, and now I had to figure out how to uproot it before it took hold. One thing was certain, Matt was playing a dangerous game, and I was going to find out why. The next morning, the tension in the house was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Lauren was quiet, and Matt had conveniently gone out before either of us woke up, leaving just the two of us in awkward silence. I tried to act normal, offering to make her coffee like I always did, but her responses were clipped, her mind clearly elsewhere. She avoided looking at me directly, and I knew Matt's little stunt the night before had gotten to her more than she was letting on. "You okay?" I asked as she stood by the window, staring out into the backyard. "Yeah," she said, not turning around. "Just thinking." "About what?" I pressed gently, walking over to stand next to her. "About us," she admitted after a pause. "And Matt. And everything." My stomach twisted. "Lauren, I swear, Matt's just messing with us. He's always been like this, stirring the pot, causing drama." "You know that, right?" She finally looked at me, her blue eyes searching mine. "I know he's difficult." But Jason, the way he said it, there was so much confidence. Like he really believed what he was saying. "He's good at that," I said, my voice tinged with frustration. "He's always been good at spinning stories. Please don't let him get inside your head." Lauren sighed and nodded, but I could tell she wasn't entirely convinced. Matt returned later that afternoon, strolling in like nothing had happened. He dropped his keys on the counter and flashed a grin at us. "Morning, lovebirds," he said, his tone dripping with fake cheerfulness. "What's for lunch?" Lauren didn't respond, and I was too busy trying to keep my anger in check. "Help yourself," I muttered, not even looking at him. He grabbed a granola bar from the pantry and leaned against the counter, unwrapping it slowly. "You guys seem a little tense. Everything okay?" "Everything's fine, Matt," I said through clenched teeth. "Good, good," he said, taking a bite. "Because I was thinking, how about a family dinner tonight? The three of us, a nice meal, maybe some wine? You know, like old times." Before I could respond, Lauren surprised me by speaking up. "That's actually not a bad idea. We could use a nice evening together." Matt beamed. "See? Lauren gets it. It'll be fun, Jace. Lighten up a little." I forced a tight smile, but inside, I was fuming. That evening, Matt took over the kitchen, insisting on cooking for us. He made spaghetti carbonara, Lauren's favorite, and poured generous glasses of wine for everyone. For the first hour, things were surprisingly pleasant. Matt was in his element, cracking jokes and telling stories about his wild nights out. Lauren was laughing, more at ease than she'd been in days. I found myself relaxing a little, thinking that maybe we could find some kind of peace. But then, of course, Matt couldn't help himself. "So, Jace," he said, twirling spaghetti around his fork, "you still mad at me for that joke last night?" Lauren stiffened slightly, her eyes darting to me. "Let's not bring that up," I said, keeping my tone even. "Why not?" Matt said, feigning innocence. "I was just messing around. I mean, it's not like you actually went to a club and met some girl, right?" I glared at him, my jaw tightening. "Drop it, Matt." He shrugged, taking another bite. Fine, fine. No need to get all worked up. I'm just saying, maybe I'm not the only one who's been a little complicated lately." "Matt," Lauren said sharply, her tone cutting through the tension. "That's enough." Matt held up his hands in mock surrender. All right. No need to gang up on me. Just trying to keep things lively." The rest of the dinner passed in strained silence. Afterward, as I was cleaning up in the kitchen, Lauren came up behind me. "You know, maybe it's time we talk about Matt," she said quietly. I put down the dish I was washing and turned to face her. "What about him?" She hesitated, biting her lip. I don't know. He's been acting strange lately. I mean, I know he's always been a little over the top, but this is different. It's like he's trying to cause trouble on purpose. I nodded, relieved that she was finally seeing what I'd been dealing with. Exactly. He thrives on chaos, Lauren. He's always been like this. He stirs things up, watches the fallout, and then plays innocent. But why would he do that to us? She asked, her voice soft. We've let him stay here. We've been helping him. Why would he try to cause problems? I don't know, I admitted, running a hand through my hair. Maybe he's jealous. Or maybe he's just bored. Who knows what goes through Matt's head? Lauren sighed, leaning against the counter. I just don't want him to drive a wedge between us. He won't, I said firmly. I won't let him. Later that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that Matt was up to something. His little digs and comments weren't random, they were calculated, deliberate. What I couldn't figure out was why. Was it jealousy? Spite? Or was it something deeper, something I hadn't seen coming? One thing was certain, Matt was a storm brewing on the horizon, and I needed to be ready when it finally hit. The next few days were strange. Tense but quiet. Matt seemed to tone down his antics, which only made me more suspicious. It wasn't like him to back off so easily, and I knew it was only a matter of time before he tried something else. Lauren, on the other hand, was doing her best to smooth things over. She was more affectionate than usual, stealing kisses as I made breakfast, texting me little "I miss you" notes while I was at work. Part of me was relieved. It felt like we were getting back to our old rhythm, but there was still this nagging feeling I couldn't shake. It wasn't long before Matt gave me a reason to trust that instinct. It started with the compliments. "Wow, Lauren," he said one evening as we were all sitting in the living room. "That dress looks amazing on you. Did Jason pick that out, or do you just naturally have impeccable taste?" I glanced up from my laptop, watching the way Matt's eyes lingered on her a little too long. "Thanks, Matt," Lauren said, brushing off the compliment with a laugh. "And no, I picked it out myself. Jason isn't exactly the fashion-forward type." "Hey," I said, pretending to be offended. Matt grinned. "She's not wrong, bro. But hey, at least you've got good taste in women." Lauren laughed again, but I could feel my face heating up. The next day, I came home early from work to find the two of them in the backyard. Lauren was tending to her garden while Matt lounged on a chair, sipping a beer. "You're seriously telling me Jason doesn't help you with this?" I heard Matt say as I approached. "He tries," Lauren said, smiling. "But let's just say gardening isn't his strong suit." Matt chuckled. "Figures. If you ever need a real partner for this, you know where to find me." I stopped in my tracks, the words hitting me like a slap. Lauren laughed, brushing it off like a joke, but I could see the way Matt was looking at her, like she was a challenge he was ready to conquer. That night, I decided I couldn't keep pretending not to notice. "Lauren," I said as we were getting ready for bed, "has Matt said anything weird to you lately?" She paused, brushing her hair in the mirror. "Weird how?" "I don't know," I said, trying to find the right words. "Like overly complimentary? Or flirty?" She frowned, turning to face me. "Are you serious? Jason, he's your brother. I think he's just being friendly." "Friendly?" I repeated, my voice flat. "Yes, friendly," she said, her tone defensive. "You're overthinking this." I wanted to push the issue, but the look on her face stopped me. She wasn't ready to hear it, not yet. The next incident happened 2 days later. I came downstairs after a shower to find Matt and Lauren in the kitchen. She was cooking dinner, and he was standing too close, way too close. "I can help you with that," Matt said, reaching around her to grab a spatula. "I've got it," Lauren replied, laughing nervously as she tried to step away. Matt didn't move. "Come on, let me. You shouldn't have to do all the work around here." My blood boiled. "Everything okay in here?" I said, my voice sharp as I stepped into the room. Lauren jumped slightly, her cheeks turning pink. "Yeah, just cooking. Dinner will be ready in a bit." Matt turned to me, grinning like he hadn't just crossed every boundary imaginable. Just giving Lauren a hand. Thought I'd earned my keep for once. Right, I said coldly, my eyes locked on his. That night, after Matt went out, I confronted Lauren again. Lauren, I'm serious. Matt is being inappropriate. She sighed, clearly frustrated. Jason, I know you two have your issues, but he's not doing anything wrong. You're reading too much into this. Am I? I snapped. Because I'm not imagining the way he looks at you. Or the way he keeps finding excuses to be close to you. Jason, she said, her voice softening. He's your brother. He's going through a rough time. Can't you just cut him some slack? I stared at her, feeling like I was talking to a wall. I don't think you're seeing what's really going on here. She shook her head, clearly done with the conversation. I think you're letting your issues with Matt cloud your judgment. Just let it go, okay? I didn't respond. Because deep down, I knew I was right. The final straw came the next day. I was working from home, sitting in the living room with my laptop, when I overheard Matt talking to Lauren in the kitchen. Jason doesn't deserve you, you know, he said, his voice low and smooth. I froze. Excuse me? Lauren replied, her tone laced with disbelief. I'm just saying. Matt continued undeterred. You're amazing, Lauren. You deserve someone who really sees you. Someone who can give you the attention you need. I stood up, my heart racing. That's enough, Matt, I said, stepping into the kitchen. Lauren looked between us, her eyes wide. Jason. No, I said, cutting her off. Matt, you need to leave. Now. Matt smirked, completely unfazed. What's the problem, bro? Just telling her the truth. Out, I said, my voice shaking with anger. Matt raised his hands in mock surrender. All right. I'll head out. Don't get your boxers in a twist. As he walked past me, he muttered under his breath. You can't keep her forever. The day Matt walked out was a relief. For the first time in months, the house felt calm. Lauren and I could breathe again, and I thought maybe we could finally get back to normal. But the peace didn't last. For a week, Matt was a ghost. No calls, no texts. His social media was quiet, and even his usual hangouts didn't yield any clues when I checked discreetly. Lauren asked about him once or twice, but I could tell she was glad for the space, too. Do you think he's okay? She asked one evening as we were cleaning up after dinner. He's fine, I said, trying to sound confident. Matt always lands on his feet. But something about his disappearance didn't sit right with me. Matt never walked away without a plan. He was up to something. I just didn't know what yet. Then, out of the blue, Matt called. Hey, bro, he said, his voice unnervingly chipper. Been a while, huh? You could say that, I replied cautiously. What do you want, Matt? Come on, man, don't be like that, he said with a laugh. I know I messed up, and I'm sorry. Really? I want to make it up to you and Lauren. Start fresh. I wasn't buying it, but I let him keep talking. Look, I've got some big news, he continued. I met someone. Her name's Amber. She's amazing. I want you guys to meet her, properly, like adults. What do you say? Dinner, drinks, a fresh start? Every instinct screamed that this was a bad idea, but Lauren, overhearing the call, gave me a nudge. Maybe he's serious, she mouthed. Fine, I said reluctantly. But this is your last chance, Matt. You won't regret it, he said, his voice dripping with fake sincerity. The night of the dinner, Lauren and I arrived at the restaurant a little early. I was on edge, trying to predict Matt's next move. Lauren, ever the optimist, seemed cautiously hopeful. Maybe this really is a turning point, she said, sipping her wine. Maybe, I muttered, though I didn't believe it for a second. Matt showed up 10 minutes late, as usual, with Amber in tow. She was tall, blonde, and strikingly beautiful, like a model straight out of a magazine. She wore a confident smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, and something about her felt calculated. Jason, Lauren, meet Amber, Matt said, draping an arm around her. Nice to meet you, she said, her voice smooth as silk. Lauren smiled warmly, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Dinner was uneventful, but the tension was palpable. Matt was unusually charming, going out of his way to compliment Lauren and me. Amber played her part well, laughing at his jokes and engaging in polite conversation. By the time we got back to our house, I was ready to call it a night. But Matt had other plans. Let's have a drink, he said, pulling out a bottle of whiskey he'd brought along. A toast to new beginnings. I hesitated, but Lauren shrugged. One drink won't hurt. Matt poured generously, and it didn't take long for the whiskey to work its magic. Amber was all over me, laughing at everything I said, leaning in a little too close. Matt, meanwhile, was focusing all his attention on Lauren, whispering things to her that made her blush and laugh nervously. All right, that's enough for me, Lauren said eventually, standing up. I'm going to bed. Matt caught her arm as she walked past. Come on, stay a little longer. The night's young. Lauren shook her head, pulling away gently. Thanks, but I'm tired. Good night, everyone. Matt watched her go, his expression unreadable. As the night wore on, Amber kept plying me with drinks. I tried to pace myself, but it was hard to keep track when she kept refilling my glass. Jason, you're so funny, she said, leaning closer. I bet Lauren's lucky to have you. I shifted uncomfortably, but before I could respond, Matt clapped me on the back. Hey, Amber, why don't you help Jason upstairs? He's looking a little wobbly. Sure, she said, smiling sweetly. I tried to protest, but my words were slurred, and my legs felt like jelly. Amber guided me upstairs, her hand lingering on my arm a little too long. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in my bed, my head pounding. Amber was nowhere to be seen, but the sheets next to me were rumpled, and a sinking feeling settled in my stomach. Downstairs, I found Matt and Lauren in the kitchen. Matt looked smug, leaning casually against the counter. Lauren's face was pale, her eyes red like she'd been crying. What's going on? I asked, my voice hoarse. Lauren looked at me, her expression a mixture of hurt and confusion. Matt told me what happened last night, she said quietly. What? I said, panic rising in my chest. He said. She trailed off, glancing at Matt, who was grinning like the Cheshire Cat. He said Amber stayed with you. Lauren's words hit me like a freight train. She stayed with me? Lauren, that's not true, I said, my voice cracking as I looked from her to Matt. Matt raised an eyebrow, his expression smug. Come on, Jace. Don't try to deny it now. Amber showed me the pictures this morning. Pretty damning stuff. Pictures? I repeated, my stomach twisting into knots. Lauren's eyes were brimming with tears, but her voice was cold. Don't play dumb, Jason. She sent me everything. Every disgusting photo. My mind was spinning. I couldn't remember anything from the night before, just flashes of Amber leaning in too close, her hand on my arm. Lauren, I said, stepping toward her. You have to believe me. I don't know what happened, but I swear I didn't do anything. She took a step back, holding up her hand. Don't. Just don't. I don't want to hear your excuses. Matt watched the whole scene unfold like he was enjoying a show. You should go, Jason, Lauren said, her voice breaking. I can't look at you right now. Lauren, please, I begged. Get out, she shouted, her tears finally spilling over. I turned to Matt, my fists clenched. You did this, I hissed. He shrugged, feigning innocence. Hey, don't blame me for your mistakes. I packed a bag and left, my heart feeling like it had been ripped out of my chest. With nowhere else to go, I called my best friend, Travis. Twizzy, I need a place to crash, I said as soon as he picked up. Dude, what's going on? You sound wrecked, he said. It's a long story, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Can I come over? Of course. Get your ass here, he said without hesitation. When I arrived at Travis's place, he didn't ask any questions at first. He just handed me a beer and let me sit in silence until I was ready to talk. Finally, I told him everything: the dinner, the whiskey, Amber, the photos, and how Lauren had kicked me out. Bro, Travis said, shaking his head. This doesn't make sense. You don't remember anything? Nothing after Amber walked me upstairs. I admitted, my head in my hands. Sounds like a setup, he said. That's what I'm saying, I replied, my frustration boiling over. Matt's been trying to mess with me and Lauren for weeks. This is just the next level of his game. Travis leaned back, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. You think Amber's in on it? She has to be, I said. She's way too convenient. She shows up out of nowhere, spends the whole night glued to me, and now there are photos? It's too perfect. Travis nodded. All right, then we need to prove it. If this was a setup, there has to be a trail. Let's start with Amber. What do we know about her? For the next couple of hours, Travis and I dug into everything we could find about Amber. She didn't have much of a social media presence, just a few carefully curated posts on Instagram, mostly glamorous selfies and vague captions about living her best life. Travis, who had a knack for tech, managed to track down her LinkedIn profile. She doesn't have a real job, he said, pointing to the screen. Her profile says she's a freelance consultant, but that's just code for nothing. What about connections to Matt? I asked. Travis frowned, scrolling through her account. Nothing obvious. No tagged posts, no mutual friends. She's either super private, or she's covering her tracks. I leaned back, running a hand through my hair. There's gotta be something. A link, a clue, anything. Don't worry, Travis said, cracking his knuckles. We'll find it. And when we do, we'll bring it all crashing down on Matt's head. That night, lying on Travis's couch, I couldn't stop replaying everything in my mind. The photos Lauren claimed to have seen, Matt's smug expression, Amber's too perfect timing, it was all so orchestrated, so cruel. But the thing that haunted me most was the look on Lauren's face. The hurt, the betrayal. I needed to clear my name, not just for me, but for her. Because despite everything, I still loved her. And I wasn't going to let Matt win. The next morning, I woke up to Travis shaking me awake. His expression was grim, his usual laid-back demeanor nowhere in sight. Jace, wake up. We've got a problem, he said, his voice low. I sat up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. What now? Travis hesitated, like he wasn't sure how to say it. I was out late last night, grabbing some food. When I got back, I saw Matt's car. It was parked near your house. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. You're sure? Positive, Travis said. I know that beat-up Honda anywhere. He was there, Jace. And it wasn't a quick visit. I saw him outside, talking to Lauren. What were they talking about? I asked, my pulse quickening. I couldn't hear everything, Travis admitted. But he was standing close, like too close, and he kept touching her shoulder, her arm. You know, like he was comforting her or something. She looked upset, but she wasn't pushing him away. I jumped up from the couch, pacing the room as anger surged through me. That snake, I muttered. He's trying to weasel his way in while I'm not there. Travis nodded. That's what it looked like. He's playing the good guy, trying to make her think he's the only one she can trust. Did you hear anything specific? I asked, desperate for more details. Bits and pieces, Travis said, scratching the back of his head. He was saying stuff like, I'll always be here for you, and you deserve better. Classic manipulative garbage. My hands clenched into fists. I should have known. He set me up, and now he's swooping in to pick up the pieces. I need to do something. Travis put a hand on my shoulder, stopping me. Look, I get it. You're mad, and you have every right to be. But you can't just storm over there and start swinging. That's what he wants, to make you look unstable. We need to be smart about this. I sat back down, my head in my hands. So what do? We gather more evidence, Travis said firmly. If Matt's pushing Lauren, and she's vulnerable, it's only a matter of time before he makes a move. But we need proof. Something concrete to show Lauren that he's been manipulating her from the start. How? I asked, feeling helpless. Travis gave me a small, determined grin. Leave that to me. I've got a few ideas. For the rest of the day, Travis worked on his laptop, tracking down any connections between Matt and Amber while brainstorming ways to uncover more of Matt's schemes. I couldn't do much but pace the room, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. I kept picturing Matt with Lauren, his arm around her, whispering lies into her ear, convincing her I was the villain. The thought made my stomach churn. That evening, Travis finally closed his laptop with a satisfied smirk. "All right, I've got a plan," he said. "What is it?" I asked, eager for anything that might turn the tide. "Step 1. Travis began. "We're going to dig into Matt's movements over the past few weeks. He's not as slick as he thinks he is, and there's bound to be a trail. Step 2. We need to confront Amber. She's the wild card in all of this. If we can figure out her angle, or better yet, get her to turn on Matt, it'll blow his whole scheme wide open." "And step 3? I asked. "Step 3, Travis said, leaning back with a grin, "is waiting for Matt to make a mistake. Guys like him always do. He's overconfident, and that's going to be his downfall." For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. With Travis on my side, I wasn't fighting this battle alone. But even as we planned our next moves, I couldn't shake the image of Matt with Lauren, worming his way deeper into her life. I had to stop him, before it was too late. The idea of meeting Amber again turned my stomach, but I couldn't stop thinking about that night. Travis's advice echoed in my head. Amber was the key. If anyone could confirm Matt's plan, it was her. I texted her under the pretense of wanting to talk. She replied almost immediately, agreeing to meet at a quiet cafe downtown. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting at a corner table with a coffee in hand. She smiled when she saw me, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Jason," she said, her voice sweet but wary. "I didn't expect to hear from you." "Amber," I said, sitting across from her. "I need answers." Her smile faltered. "Answers about what?" "That night," I said, leaning forward. "The photos. The setup. All of it. I know Matt was behind it, and I know you were involved. Just tell me the truth." Amber hesitated, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her cup. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, though her voice wavered. "Amber," I said firmly, "I'm not here to play games. I already know Matt's been trying to ruin my life. If you're smart, you'll tell me everything now, before this blows up in your face too." Her eyes darted around the cafe, as if she was afraid someone might overhear. Finally, she sighed and leaned closer. "Okay," she said in a low voice. "I'll tell you. But you didn't hear this from me." What she revealed made my blood run cold. According to Amber, the entire plan had been orchestrated by Matt. From the moment he moved into our house, he'd been plotting to tear Lauren and me apart. "He hates you," Amber said bluntly. "He's jealous of everything you have, your career, your house, your marriage. He wants to take it all from you. And Lauren? She's just part of the prize to him." "What about you?" I asked, my voice tight. Amber looked down, shame flickering across her face. "Matt asked me to help. He said it would be easy money and I needed it. My job's a joke, and he promised to take care of me if I played along." "The photos?" I pressed. Amber winced. "He drugged you, Jason? That night, when you were drinking? He slipped something into your whiskey. I was supposed to pretend we hooked up, take some photos, and make it look convincing. He wanted Lauren to think you cheated." I felt sick. Every piece of the puzzle clicked into place, and the full scope of Matt's betrayal became clear. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Amber met my eyes, and for the first time, she looked genuinely remorseful. "Because I didn't sign up for this. Matt's unhinged. He's obsessed with destroying you, and I don't want to be part of it anymore. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. Thanks for the honesty, I said, my tone cold. Jason, Amber said, her voice trembling. Be careful. Matt, he's dangerous. Armed with the truth in Amber's testimony, I drove straight home, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. This was it. I was done playing Matt's game. I had the proof I needed to expose him, to show Lauren the full extent of his lies. But nothing could have prepared me for what I found when I walked through the door. The house was quiet, too quiet. I called out for Lauren, but there was no answer. My heart pounded as I climbed the stairs, the familiar sense of dread settling over me. When I reached our bedroom, the door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, the words already on my lips. Lauren, I have all the proofs. And then I froze. There, on our bed, was Lauren and Matt. They didn't see me at first. Matt was on top of her, his shirtless back to the door, while Lauren's hands were pressed against his chest as if trying to push him away. Matt, stop, she said, her voice shaky. I can't do this. Oh, come on, Matt said, his voice low and insistent. You know you want this. I stepped into the room, my voice shaking with rage. What the hell is going on here? Matt whipped around, his face contorting into a mix of shock and fury. You're supposed to be gone, he shouted, scrambling off the bed. Yeah, well, plans change, I snapped. And guess what, Matt? I know everything. Amber told me about your little plan. The photos, the lies, everything. Matt's face twisted into a snarl. You don't know anything. Really? I said, stepping closer. Because I've got all the proof I need to bury you. Before I could say another word, Matt bolted for the window. Matt, don't you dare! I shouted, lunging toward him. But he was too quick. He threw the window open and jumped, landing with a heavy thud on the lawn below. I leaned out the window, watching as he sprinted toward his car and sped off into the night. I turned back to Lauren, who was sitting on the bed, her face pale and her eyes wide with shock. Jason, she started, her voice trembling. Save it, I said, my voice cold. We're done. Lauren sat frozen on the bed, her face pale and her breathing shallow. The weight of everything hung heavy in the air, suffocating and unrelenting. Jason, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. It's not what it looked like. Not what it looked like, I said, my voice cold and laced with bitterness. I just walked in on my brother, on top of you, in our bed. What exactly am I supposed to think? She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. He kissed me, she choked out. But I told him to stop. I swear, Jason, I told him to stop. Save it, I snapped, pacing the room, the adrenaline from seeing Matt still coursing through my veins. Do you even understand what he's been doing to us? How long he's been planning this? Or were you too busy buying into his lies to notice? Lauren looked up at me, her tear-streaked face a mixture of guilt and desperation. I didn't know. I didn't know he was lying about you, about everything. I was so angry, so hurt. I let him get in my head. I stopped pacing and stared at her, the pain in my chest almost unbearable. And now what? You believed him. You let him turn you against me. You let him into our life. She shook her head violently. No, Jason. I didn't let him in. He pushed his way in. He manipulated me. I thought I could trust him. Trust him? I spat, my voice rising. Lauren, he's a liar. He's always been a liar. And now, because of him, our marriage, everything we built, it's falling apart. Her sobs grew louder, and for a moment, I felt the tiniest flicker of sympathy. But it wasn't enough to drown out the anger, the betrayal, the heartbreak. I grabbed the envelope I'd prepared earlier from my bag, the evidence Amber had given me, screenshots, messages, and details of Matt's plans. I tossed it onto the bed in front of her. Read it, I said, my voice flat. See for yourself how much of a monster he really is. Lauren hesitated, her trembling hands reaching for the envelope. She opened it, her eyes scanning the pages. With each passing second, her expression shifted, from confusion to disbelief, and finally, to horror. "Oh my God!" she whispered, her voice barely audible. He did all of this. The photos, the drugs, the lies? Every last bit of it," I said bitterly. "And you let him use you to destroy me." Lauren looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears. "Jason, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to wrap her in my arms and tell her everything would be okay. But the wound was too fresh, the betrayal too deep. "I need space," I said, my voice cracking. "I need time to figure out what comes next." "Jason, please," she begged, standing up and reaching for me. "Don't go. We can fix this." "We can." "Lauren," I interrupted, stepping back. "I can't do this right now. Not after everything." I turned and walked out of the room, grabbing my keys on the way out. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there. As I drove aimlessly through the streets, my phone buzzed with a message from Travis. "Travis, you okay? Need me to come over?" I pulled over to the side of the road and called him. "Twizzy," I said, my voice shaking. "It's worse than we thought. Matt's gone completely off the rails." "What happened?" he asked, concern evident in his tone. I hesitated, the memory of what I'd just witnessed flashing through my mind. "I walked in on him. With Lauren." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Jason," Travis said finally, his voice firm. "We're going to take this guy down. Whatever it takes." For the first time that night, I felt a spark of determination. Matt had pushed me too far, and now, it was my turn to fight back. He wanted to destroy my life, but I wasn't going to let him win. Not now. Not ever. I spent the next 2 days at Travis's place, running every moment through my head on repeat. Anger boiled inside me, but there was something else too, a nagging doubt that wouldn't let go. The more I thought about Lauren's reaction, her tears, and her insistence that she'd pushed Matt away, the more I began to question if I'd been too harsh. If Matt could manipulate Amber into drugging me and setting up fake photos, what else was he capable of? Finally, I made the decision to face Lauren again. When I walked back into the house, Lauren was sitting on the couch, her face pale and her eyes red-rimmed. She looked up as I entered, hope flickering in her expression. "Jason," she said, standing quickly. "Lauren," I started, holding up a hand. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." She nodded, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Matt," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "Did he force you into anything?" Her eyes filled with tears as she nodded, her voice breaking. "He kissed me, Jason. He wouldn't stop, and I tried to push him away, but he wouldn't listen." I closed my eyes, my jaw tightening as a wave of guilt washed over me. "I should have believed you," I said quietly. "I'm sorry, Lauren." She stepped closer, hesitating before placing a hand on my arm. "It's not your fault. Matt's been manipulating both of us this whole time." "No more," I said firmly. "We're going to stop him." That night, we sat together at the kitchen table, formulating a plan. Lauren's hands shook as she typed out a text to Matt, but her determination was clear. "Lauren, hey. I've been thinking about what happened. Maybe we shouldn't stop. Can we talk?" We didn't have to wait long for his reply. "Matt, knew you'd come around. I'll be there tomorrow night." "Can't wait, winky face." I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. "He's going to regret this," I muttered. The next day, I contacted the police. With Amber's testimony and the photos Matt had used to blackmail us, we had enough to open an investigation. But it was the drugs he used on me that sealed the deal. The officers assured me they'd be ready when the time came. "Just get him there," the lead detective said. "We'll take care of the rest." That evening, Lauren got ready, her nerves evident in the way she kept adjusting her dress and pacing the living room. You're sure about this? I asked, watching her closely. She nodded, though her hands trembled. I want this to end, Jason. For good. When the doorbell rang, she shot me a quick glance before heading to answer it. I stayed hidden in the kitchen, my heart pounding in my chest. Lauren, Matt said smoothly as he stepped inside. You look incredible. Thanks, she said, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. Come in. Let's talk. I listened from my hiding spot as they moved into the living room. Matt's tone was smug, his words dripping with confidence. You know, I always knew you'd see things my way, he said. Jason doesn't deserve you. He never did. You think so? Lauren said, playing along. I know so, Matt replied. And now, we can finally have what we deserve. That was my cue. I stepped into the room, my presence stopping Matt mid-sentence. His face contorted in anger as he stood up. What the hell are you doing here? He spat. Ending this, I said calmly. You've been playing your games for long enough, Matt. He sneered. You've got nothing on me. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone. I have everything. The texts, the photos, Amber's confession. And oh yeah, the police. As if on cue, officers burst through the door, their voices commanding. Matthew Carter, you're under arrest for possession and distribution of illegal substances, as well as attempted coercion. Matt's face twisted in shock as they cuffed him. You set me up! He shouted, glaring at Lauren and me. No, I said, stepping closer. You set yourself up. This is what happens when you let your ego think you're untouchable. As the officers dragged him out, Matt turned back, his eyes filled with rage. You haven't seen the last of me, he shouted. Lauren and I stood together, watching as the police car drove away. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of relief. It's over, I said softly, turning to Lauren. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, Jason, for believing me. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her close. We're going to be okay, I said. And for the first time, I truly believed it. In the weeks that followed Matt's arrest, life slowly began to return to normal. Lauren and I started counseling to rebuild the trust Matt had worked so hard to destroy. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, anger, and sadness, but we were determined to move forward together. Amber, surprisingly, came through. Her testimony ensured Matt was held accountable for his actions, and the charges against him stuck. He was sentenced to several years in prison, giving us the peace of knowing he couldn't interfere in our lives anymore. One evening, as Lauren and I sat on the back porch watching the sunset, she reached for my hand. We made it, she said softly, her voice full of hope. Yeah, I replied, squeezing her hand. We did. The scars Matt left behind would always be there, but together, we were stronger. Our story wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and we weren't going to let anyone take it from us again. And that was enough. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe for future stories.